that one got off the internet.
Yeah. And formally to welcome everybody here. Yeah, Frank, you can sit right there, and the chief deputy will sit right next to you. Glad you're here. Thank you. Telemundo. Dr. and Mrs. Carson, welcome to Pinell County. I'm Paul Babeu. I'm honored to serve as the sheriff of Pinell County. Also, as you already met, our county attorney to your left, and State Representative Frank Pratt, and Chief Henry, who's here as well. I also want to point out, you met Lieutenant Scott Elliott, who, that was probably the funniest thing we've heard today. Dr. Carson asked Scott, did you get a good night's rest? Because he's going to be flying the helicopter that you're going to be in. And to his left, Brian Messing, who's our sergeant in charge of the anti-smuggling unit, and Christopher Platt, who's our detective, who's a part of that unit as well. And just a quick overview of Pinell County and Arizona. We only have 15 counties in Arizona. And so you look back east, North Carolina has 100 counties. A lot of states have a lot more. And the difference, because I originally came from Massachusetts, the difference between a sheriff's office in some states and here is very stark. Here in rural Pinell County, we have 420,000 residents, and more than half of them live in unincorporated areas, meaning that if somebody calls 911, a guy or a gal just like similar to me will show up to that call. And we're tasked with additional duties as well because of the sheer size. Our county is larger geographically than the state of Connecticut. So you put that in perspective, and it's, it's significant.
The one county is bigger.
Just our county, just the county that you're in now. And Florence here, it's only 7,500 residents, but we have 18,000 prisoners in this town. So this is like, this is our county seat. So the rest of the county, you'll see from the air as well, Santan Valley, where I reside, a community unincorporated of 95,000 people. And then Casa Grande to our far west, the city of Maricopa, Eloy, Coolidge, Arizona City, Florence here, and all the way down just north of Tucson, our county goes. And up on the US 60 where you came through Apache Junction, Gold Canyon, where you stayed last night, and then all the way up to Superior in the Copper Corridor. So we've transitioned quickly. Our county population has more than doubled in the past 12 years, and we're part of the Sun Corridor. So it's a high-growth, fast-growth area, and even for somebody like myself who was a transplant, moved here from another state, gets elected as the sheriff, and that's a sign of to go from 180,000 people to 420,000 people in a pretty short period of time. So a very fast-growing area. With that here, I want to talk, it's important about enforcing the law, obviously, for our sheriff's office. I provided a packet for you that you're welcome to look through if you'd like to. That'll follow this presentation. And this first slide, I wanted to point out to give you a sense of here in blue, this is the Tucson sector, and a map of the United States, but this says 2010. And the reason why I wanted to point out, because this is an evolving, fluid fight that we have about the border. Is it more secure? And we've heard time and time again from former Secretary Janet Napolitano and others from the administration saying the border's more secure than ever. And that we believe, and we wanted to submit to you that that's not the case. And that is false. And that sadly lulls the American people into a false sense of security, not just for the illegal immigration issue, the drug cartels that we're fighting, and we're going to talk about that, but far more important that we'd want you to understand and consider throughout today's tour is the threat that we face from the enemies of America, from ISIS and others who would harm our country. And I bring that as well, not just my experience as a sheriff, but I'm a retired Army officer, served a tour in Iraq, but I think even more importantly, I was a commanding officer in Yuma for a year and a half, and I led 700 active duty soldiers and airmen in the National Guard in our effort to secure the border. In that sector of the 9 sectors here that we have from San Diego, El Centro, the Yuma sector, Tucson, El Paso, and it goes all the way down. There's 9 sectors in the 4 southwest border states. At this time, in 2010, you see the numbers here, and you could probably read it closer in your packet. 241,000 illegals apprehended in 2009. In 2010, there were 212,000. And the numbers I'm going to show you currently are far different. And this shows you how fluid this push is. Clearly, with numbers like that, that's what we call in law enforcement a clue, right? That the border's not secure. Here's the most recent stats by the U.S. Border Patrol, and I wanted you to take that packet with you. And I also have a 4-page, more detailed packet that I wanted to present you here that you can take at a later time when you're having a tough time sleeping. Not that you would during this effort, but so you can look through that. And I wanted to point out, these are all the sectors for every part of the United States, and it shows the coastal sectors. You have the 6,000 miles of border with Canada, and then the southwest border, because I've even had direct conflicts with Secretary Napolitano talking about the southwest border, and she said, Sheriff, I'm the Secretary of Homeland Security for the whole country, not just the border with Mexico. And she says, what about the Canadian border? And I shot back, I said, Madam Secretary, we don't have 1 million people rushing across the Canadian border, right? And this is the evidence for that. And I wanted you to have that document, just looking at the total apprehensions here, the staffing, and then you're looking at these numbers, 3,000. Look here, the southwest border, Doctor, is 500,000 people, okay? And this is the ones that we know have been apprehended. These are the seizures. Second, the drug smuggling that we're going to talk about, and we're going to show you after this briefing, we're going to show you just some of the marijuana, but it's not just marijuana. You'll see that it's cocaine, it's heroin, it's methamphetamine. Mexico is the #1 importer into the United States of meth into the United States. And Lando, our county attorney, will tell you nearly half of all the drugs that are coming into the U.S. come in through here. So whatever we do or don't do affects the rest of the country when it comes to illegal drugs. And you'll see just in dollar amounts. This does not include the DEA. Want to qualify that. It does not include local, county, state law. This is just the Border Patrol. But you see here, only $33,000 worth of drugs, the U.S. Border Patrol in the coastal borders. The northern borders with Canada, only $600,000 worth. And you see here the overwhelming 7.3 million of their 7.9. That's just their latest stats that they have public. Here, we have been a top pass-through county, and people say, Sheriff, how can that be? You're not even on the border. Well, we're going to actually go to the border today in Cochise County. But a map of Arizona, the Tucson sector, which we're in, there's 3 counties south of us. Cochise County, which we're going to go through. Pima County, which we're going down. You're going to have lunch there in Tucson. And then Santa Cruz County. All 3 of those counties where people enter illegally or smuggle drugs or any potential threat could come in, it's all shaped or funneled, if you can picture that, because of the interstates, Interstate 8, Interstate 10, all the rural routes, and then the terrain features naturally shape that traffic into Pinal County. So we're a pass-through county. So just to clarify that, they're not staying here. They're passing through to go to what could be their destination or a platform to project anywhere else in the United States from Metro Phoenix. U.S. Border Patrol. This is an important fact here. U.S. Border Patrol, I've asked the agents in charge, not just here, the highest officials in the government, tell me, and I've had public town halls with them as well, and I said, I want to hear from you, what's your stat of how many get through? Because it's like talking to a fisherman who's gone on a trip, right? Tell us about the fish that got away. How do you define that? And so the metrics that the government has changed recently to define how many come through. And what's acceptable? And I would pose that question. What is acceptable? 17 to 30% of those caught already have a criminal record in the United States. So they're entering, so they've already been here, and they already have a criminal record established here in our country. Never mind their country of origin. According to a recent GAO report, 56% of the border is not under operational control. And that's a tactical term I can explain further throughout the day. And a lot of this, if you have questions now, Doctor, or after, or throughout the day, I'd be happy to answer those or at a later time. Most would agree 44% is a failing grade, especially when it comes to this important issue. Yuma is under operational control. And what we did, and why you'll see part of my recommendation for a solution, is to have an initial deployment, again, of 6,000 armed soldiers for a period of 2 years. And part of this is what we learned, what we call the proof of concept. It actually worked. It worked in Yuma. 97% reduction in illegal entries and drug smuggling in that sector. And so that's the proof of concept. We need to replicate what works, right? Reinforce success, a key military principle. These are the signs. In fact, these signs are still up in Pinell County. But here, these were taken down after much criticism by not just me, everybody. We're outraged in America. We have signs written in English facing north, not south, warning American citizens that it's not safe to travel in parts of our own country. It's just some images right here in our state and in Pinell County of drug smugglers. Homeland Security says there's at least 75 to 100 lookout posts. And so you may think, what's a lookout post? Like an LPOP, lookout post, observation post, high terrain feature that you're going to see today, and Lieutenant Elliott's going to point them out, where we've actually captured, and these men were part of that, were these lookouts living in caves for 30 days at a time up to, resupplied with food and water. Crazy to imagine that this happens deep in the heart of America, right? And it's the cartels. These are foreign criminals that are here, not just illegals, foreign criminals. Nearly a half pled guilty and are serving 2.5 years in prison. The sheriff's office and our county attorney, to your left, Lando Voiles, has been a part of that partnership. And before we get to our guys here talking about the caves, they were just in some yesterday, I wanted to invite our county attorney to come up just for a couple minutes just to explain what exactly we're doing in that partnership, Lando, if you would, and then I'll come back up.
Great. Well, Dr. Carson, first of all, thank you so much for bringing you and your lovely wife up here to show an interest in what we're doing and what we're experiencing here in Pinell County. I think one of the things that's interesting to note is that, like the sheriff said, this is a pass-through county. And one of the reasons why we have so much passing through, besides just the fact that it funnels through here, is the fact that we have a lot of national land, nationally owned land here in Pinell County and Arizona in general. We actually have the Tohono O'odham Indian Reservation, which runs from the border all the way up into Pinell County. And so we actually, to finish this operation and successfully prosecute them, we had to argue for jurisdiction on those cases because we actually pulled those scouts off of the Indian Reservation. So after pulling them off of the Indian Reservation, we argued that there's a conspiracy to commit a crime here in Pinell County. And we were able to show that with the experts from Border Patrol. Now, what's interesting also is that the sheriff had to cross-deputize these Border Patrol agents so that they had the authority to do that and then also bring them back to book them in. So I guess the big point and the take-home message here is that, yes, we're doing it, but unfortunately this is a cost to the state that should be a federal cost. This is a cost that the federal government should be protecting us on because they failed us, not the Border Patrol that's on the ground, but the method of the method that the administration is imposing. We have costs now that are sent down to the states. There's a lot of different costs that we're having to implement, including not just prosecution, but imprisonment, because these individuals are serving prison time. Where they should have been serving federal prison, now they're serving state prison time. So there's a heavy weight that's being, a heavy burden being placed on the states that shouldn't be there.
And if the administration had its way, the state wouldn't be doing anything either, right? And they would just be free to do what they wanted.
Based on Jay Johnson's written policies, you're absolutely right, Doctor. So, yes, that's exactly right. So I guess the take-home message is We would like help. We would love to have help. But if the federal government's not going to do it, my office will be the alternative and the viable alternative to the federal government. So,
thanks, Nate. And that's just in the last year, Dr. Carson, 19 cartel scouts have been arrested here. These are the lookouts, and they've never. This is the first time in the U.S. that they've ever successfully been prosecuted. They've always been captured, released, right, with no consequence, no punishment. And so this is history that we've achieved in our county. We've arrested these over a 50-mile swath of land, and they're on a high terrain feature with communication, encrypted radio systems that our sheriff's office still doesn't have to this day, right? You could listen to it on an app on a phone for our communication, and they're talking, hey, the coast is clear, come on up, no deputies around, or no border patrol.
But when you put them in
Yes.
jail for 2.5 years, when they get out, don't they just go right back to doing it?
Yes, sir. And what we're going to point out, one of the largest drug busts in the history of Arizona occurred here. And what happened, they reconstitute nearly immediately because these are billion-dollar operations. These are the faces of the actual cartel scouts here. What do you find in a drug cartel cave? Here's what you find. I'm going to invite now Sergeant Messing and Detective Platt to come up and just stand here so people can hear you here as you're talking. Just give a couple minutes about what exactly do we see, what do we find. Some people think this isn't going on, right? And here are the caves. Tell us.
The biggest thing about the scouts that people think is because they're living in the mountains, they're not organized. These are very organized, well-supported, well-equipped people. They have a logistical supply of resupplies, radios, Sheriff mentioned communications. They have a very complex system, digitally encrypted, roving radio. So if we would get it, and we would get a wire written on that, in a matter of an hour, they could change the radio systems for the whole thing, from here all the way back down to Mexico. When we go after them 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, they would sit on the mountain and wave at us, do whatever. They didn't care we're up there. Now with our efforts, they hear a helicopter coming, they're running. And they hide and they get. But the biggest problem we're having is we're arresting them, getting them off the mountain. 2 days later, we're having to hit the same mountain again. Because if our resupplied, another group comes in, they've taken back over them.
I'm not suggesting anything with this question, but if you shoot them, what's the consequences to you?
A civil rights violation. We go to prison. They haven't done anything to it. I mean, nothing that justifies that use of force is there. Yet the problem is in Mexico, their use of force against officers has grown tremendously. We haven't seen it as much in America yet, but it's coming. We know it is. I mean, they've got rifles, they've got young kids.
Solar panels.
Solar panels, yeah. Solar panels up in the upper right are designed for the repowering of all their radios and all their radio systems. Not necessarily for food or anything like that, but for running that. You'll see in the lower right corner, they're all wearing camouflage so they can rock up. And they have actually, and you see up this upper left-hand corner where they're living at, they would jump into that, throw the rocks over top of them, and we actually have to go through and pull rocks to try to find them. They're that.
Now, if you had a drone that was equipped with a missile, and you shot it into there, and it blew it up, what would be the consequences to you?
Well, we'd go to prison.
See, okay.
So.
We don't have any drones in Pinell County. We don't have any missiles. But this is where, and part of that, if you guys can sit back.
But it is a sovereign
Part of
issue.
that, Doctor, is that, this is what I hear quite often back from residents of not just the county, of our state. People are mad. People are outraged that, is this really happening in the United States? We're talking about, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and this is similar tactics. They control terrain features, high points, in order to move their criminal operations. And so people have suggested actions, extreme actions from us. And this is where we said, how in the world did the sheriff's office end up fighting this. This is the job, if there's anything articulated in our Constitution and the responsibility of the president in this country, is to secure the border
Absolutely.
and defend our country from criminal activity like this. Here's what I mentioned earlier, Operation Pipeline Express. This happened about two plus years ago now. The largest drug bust in the history of Arizona was one of the largest in the nation at the time, nearly $3 billion. It was estimated over a period that they smuggled just through here over 4 years. And this isn't just people think it's marijuana. It's black tar heroin, even heroin now. We're finding open source intel. It's there, so I'm not sharing state secrets. They're replacing their cash crops on certain land with marijuana to grow poppies. They're growing, it's no longer just Afghanistan, they're growing it in Mexico. And most people have no clue this is happening. So the heroin epidemic that's going on across the country, it's just not here in our communities, it's all across. This is where it's coming from. Chapo Guzman, who you know, this guy escaped prison for the second time. He's the head of this network that they believe they control this area of America, right? And so that one day we arrested 76 individuals of this cartel, 108 firearms. And they weren't just carrying, I'm carrying a 40 caliber Glock, they were carrying scoped rifles and AK-47s. And 2 of these we traced back to Fast and Furious. So the 2,000 weapons that went down under ATF, the Department of Justice, and this whole thing while Eric Holder and Barack Obama were blasting our Second Amendment freedoms, they were part of this operation that funneled through our state, didn't happen in New Mexico or California, our state, to the cartels. And this is proof for you that they're using these weapons, bringing them back, potentially being pointed, these barrels, at our own law enforcement in America. Outrageous. This is video in Pinell County, and these are not hikers backpacking, enjoying recreating. These packs of marijuana, how much do they weigh, Chris?
Usually between 40 to 50 pounds.
40 to 50 pounds. It could be a 3 to 5 day march from Mexico on foot. And these are called mules, right?
Yes.
Doesn't end here. He has a radio. They coordinate. They even put cameras up. They have an elaborate system to evade law enforcement detection and arrest. That effort that we did, the $3 billion, that took us 8 months to do. And we worked with all our partners in an effort to make that happen. Mass prison break. The president, and I've said this, and it's not just political, the president has led the largest prison break in the history of our country.
Which president?
This president, Barack Obama. And so here, and I say this happened right in our county. February 23rd, ICE employees, I had 5 different employees call me directly. 4 of the 5 were military veterans who swore an oath to defend our country, and they were outraged that they were being forced. They were told on Friday, tomorrow and Sunday, people called in on overtime, releasing nearly 500 criminals, illegals, who've been convicted of crimes that were all set for deportation out of our country, mass release. This is at the time, if you remember, they were turning up the volume on the sequestration. This is what they did. And you may remember that in the media. It happened here. I was the first one, not that it's not about me. I was the first one to come out and say, this is happening, and they said I was lying. ICE themselves told the media I was lying, the sheriff's making this up, and it was hours later they confirmed, it was only 200 people, and none of them had criminal record. They were just being held, detained for administrative purposes, complete lies. And then an AP reporter, I'll give credit to the press, because they're the ones who had secured inside information, documents that prove 2,223 were actually released already with a plan of 10,000 to be released. If we didn't drag them into the light of day, they would have released 10,000 criminals in an effort to do what? And we had 2 charged with murder in my county, over a dozen that were convicted of sexual assault, rape, child molestation, released into my county for 2 years. I've asked for their names, where they were released to, and they refused to give it to me even. 67,000 criminals released in the past 2 years. These are we're not talking even today about the 12 to 20 million illegals who are here. Everybody has a different opinion about that. I'm talking about the most serious, violent offenders that nobody should disagree with. That these people, and you see this over here, this little poster board. We did a press conference right here in this room yesterday talking about these three, and you'll see, Doctor, not one of them is Hispanic. This guy's from Sudan. This guy's from Russia, and this guy is from Iraq. And this is evidence that ICE is releasing. They just started a new program. I just told you 2 years ago they would never tell me their names. They just started last week here in our state to do the LENS, Law Enforcement Notification System, to notify, hey, we're releasing these guys, somehow thinking that it's okay now that they're just telling us, right? Didn't change anything in the process. Convicted of kidnapping, multiple aggravated assaults, and 2 of them for murder. And they were released into our state. I didn't know where they lived, right?
These were orders from ICE.
These are orders from ICE. Their only excuse, and I have, Tim, do you have the press releases?
They're right here, boss.
Here's the information we put out yesterday, and it's double-sided. And joined at the same day we released, the sheriffs of Arizona unanimously said, this is outrageous, and we stand against it. It's crazy. It is crazy. And so this, I wanted to point out a couple things, because everybody says that it's Mexicans and it's Central Americans. The whole system's broken. The fact, here's their excuse, and we highlighted on each of their rap sheets. I said he was released because he didn't have travel documents to prove citizenship. Not one of these illegals have travel documents. So they're saying that all these criminals, the 67,000 that I pointed out, will never leave America. And these are the worst criminals. And Lando and I were talking earlier. If you're convicted in Arizona and you're an illegal, you serve 50% of your time. But if you're a U.S. citizen, you serve 85% of your time. Right, Lando? This is outrageous. So 5, 10, 4.
And what,
yes, sir.
what excuse does ICE give?
I've actually, right here, that's their actual excuse here. And on the back side, you have 2 more excuses. This is the same. They're saying they don't have travel documents, so they can't prove, even though they know he's from Sudan, they can't prove it in the law because of their hands are tied. A lot of these men and women in ICE are good Americans. They're just bound by, and it's the same thing for him. And then here, because he has permanent status, he's not a citizen, they said we can't take it away from him because it's a glitch in the system. You know, their hands are tied by that. And time again, here's a whole stack of illegals who 14 times. Every time we arrest them, we tell the world 16 times deported, 16 times, 11 times deported, 10 to 30 illegals running through neighborhood. It just goes on and on. The numbers here that we're local law enforcement. And people often ask, how is this happening? Sheriff, how are they coming back? We had one just a few months ago that proudly admitted after a high-speed chase by our deputies, Texas, right? And that past an hour, and he illegals, that he had been deported over 20 times. So it happens because there's no consequence. There's no enforcement of the law. That's why it happens, so nobody should scratch their head about that. Refugees, we've been impacted. They all came through in Texas, right? And that packet points out the extreme numbers, how many came in last year. They actually flew to our state of Arizona, in our county. 40 plus of them in Pinal County are still here to this day. And what we've said is the most compassionate thing to do is reunite them with their families back in their country of origin. Because if we continue to allow this, it's like putting a neon sign at the border saying, we're open, make it to the border and you're home free. Jay Johnson's 6-page memo. And this is where I have this right here for you. That's the press release I sent out. That's his actual memo. And we released that publicly because if you remember, when this happened, on November 24th, 20th of 14, the very same day President Obama spoke to the world, right? And if you remember what he said, and this is where nobody's capturing this, he said, if you've been here 5 years or more as an illegal, which is only about 5 million people, which is false, that you have deferred action and you have a work permit. That's what he told the American people. The very same day, again, in law enforcement, this is the evidence, and it's right there. He has 22 different agencies that work for him. He directed them about prosecutorial discretion. And in that memo, it's very clear that it says January of that year. If you've been here from January of 14, now it's a year ago, prior to that, you have deferred action. So it was an absolute coordinated lie that on January of that year, so essentially it includes all illegals, have essentially deferred action. In one wave of the hand by the president. The priority is not the 12 to 20 million illegals, not border security and enforcing the law. What about putting Americans in our country first in this process? The head ICE detention removal operation guy in Arizona called me after this 6-page memo, because it says in this memo, if you read it carefully, that there's a prioritizing of effort. And they're trying to say the worst criminals, which we've already shown you over here, they're not keeping in custody. That's not a priority for them. That they're releasing all the ones that are in custody that were set for deportation. They, in my county alone, he said, Sheriff, we're releasing 30 to 50 a day in Pinell County. And I said, I have to ask, can I have their names and where you're releasing them to? Sheriff, you know I can't give you that.
But if you deport them and they just come right back, what's being accomplished?
Here's the difference, and excellent question, is they use what's called VR, voluntary return. They're not being deported. And that's where all they're doing is waiving their rights, the rights that we're saying they're assumed that they have through our judicial process, and they sign this waiver saying, I waive all my standing and I just want to be returned, repatriated, voluntary returned, and that's what's happening to all of them. So there is no punishment, there's no consequence, and therefore when they re-enter the 14, 18, 20 times, nothing happens to them. It's a revolving door. This catch and release that we've been told has ended, it's a lie. And here, you're in a county that we can prove it, day in, day out. And so that's what's going to continue to happen. The father of Grant Ronenbeck, he's 21 years of age. I actually met him. His father told me yesterday, he says, Sheriff, you met him. He told me that he wanted to be a police officer. And he worked at the Quick Trip, which is a local convenience store, but he was working at a different store in Mesa, and he was executed. His father describes it. He was murdered. You may know of this. This is Altamirano, the suspect who was not just accused. He only pled to one serious felony, but the victim, the female, said he committed a home invasion, kidnapped her for a week, and then raped her. And so this guy, ICE releases, and they're saying, again, that it's a glitch in the system. They didn't even monitor this guy. He goes into this convenience store and shoots him over packs of cigarettes. And this is us yesterday when we were here. The other mother of a killed citizen of our state, Sergeant Mendoza. He was off duty, just got off of work as a police officer, was driving on the US 60 and in the traffic lane, in the extreme lane, and head-on collision. The person was drunk, had prior criminal convictions, was kept in the United States. And that person killed her son. And she was here as well. Most important steps, this is just for the border security. This is what I've advocated for years, and we used a proof of concept. 2 years, deploy 6,000 armed National Guard soldiers, complete the double barrier fence with surveillance platforms, lighting sensors, asphalt roads in between to allow to get to a certain area, a breached area quickly, complemented with the cameras, infrared at night, all of that. More important than any of that is fully enforce the law. All of this that I've talked about, all these problems, stem from a lack of consequence.
Right.
They know, and they're heroes in the Border Patrol, which I always refer to them to not confuse the incompetence of the administration with the good work that they try to do. They're looked at, sadly, as mall cops. with in respect to the mall cops, but no law enforcement authority, because they're arrested, detained, and they just come back to try another day. They run from them, you know, freely, because there's no regard there. This is a pursuit on the highway. They're throwing out bales of marijuana to try to not just discard the evidence, but to, you see he's weaving in and out of traffic, try to cause a traffic wreck.
Total disregard for human life.
I know, it's horrible. There should be bazookas mounted on the front of the police car.
We're not going to drive this way today.
He's got a lot of stuff in that car.
Yeah. I can't end the clip early because everybody wants to know what happens, right?
Yeah. It's a fast car.
We flatten their tires with spikes. This obviously puts not just them, but our deputies in danger and the public in danger when we do this. What do we do? Not pursue the criminals?
Right.
He's not going to get that far. He's going to come out right here. Significant numbers,
And the foot pursuit is on.
You can't shoot him?
Now, only the fleeing felon rule is if we know that they pose imminent threat to the life of somebody else, like they just committed murder, and we know they're still armed, and they're likely to harm somebody else or another officer.
How about tranquilizer dart?
Absolutely. But the thing is, anytime we've got to believe that they're armed with lethal force. So our deputies are drawn when they're pursuing these people, shouting commands, giving orders.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened. A couple things we're going to do, not just for your information, for the media. We're going to leave here, minus if you wanted to speak first, or we have a couple connexes. We usually have anywhere from 20, 30,000 up to 40,000 pounds of marijuana that's here. We just sent about 15,000 just this past week for destruction. That's just the marijuana. But methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin, that's apprehended. But I wanted to show you that, and then some of the backpacks that they actually use. Okay. And then as we walk from there, Lieutenant Elliott's going to give you a safety briefing, because you and I are going to get on the helicopter with him. You're going to sit in the front seat, in fact. So it's up to you, Doctor, if you want to just go and do that, or if you wanted to talk from here and answer any questions.
I will answer some questions or say a statement.
You got it.
Well, first of all, thank you, Sheriff, and all the deputies and other people who, commit so much time and effort and put your own lives in jeopardy for the sake of protecting us. And it's really very disturbing that our federal government doesn't back you up. I mean, clearly we have a responsibility to the American people to protect them, not only for people coming from Honduras and Mexico, but the global jihadists. And this is going to become an increasing problem. And, if we don't put the effort behind this to really stop it, all of America is going to suffer significantly. And we have to stop being stupid. It really goes back to something that, I hate so much, and that's political correctness, that keeps us from being able to do what needs to be done to secure our borders. And at some point, we're going to have to be intelligent, because if we don't, we're going to suffer the consequences. So, I just very much appreciate the law enforcement officers who are doing this, and I can't even imagine how frustrating it is, to go through all of this, put your lives on the line, and then the guy's back out doing bad stuff again. You put him in jail, he comes right back out, comes back over here. There's no consequences. It's almost as if we have people on the inside who are working against our interests. I don't know if they're just stupid or if they actually are working against our interests, but these are problems I think that absolutely can be solved if the real desire to solve them is there. And it's going to really go back to the American people. The American people will have to make a decision about what kind of people do they want leading our nation. Do they want people who are soft on this kind of stuff and put the American people in jeopardy? Or do they want people who actually understand what's going on and are willing to do whatever is necessary in order to secure our borders and protect our people? Thank you. Anybody have a question?
Carson, Anita Roman with Fox 10. Welcome to Arizona. You mentioned if you deport them and they come back, what's the point? Then what's your suggestion? Because that's what keeps happening.
Well, my suggestion is obviously we either keep them locked up or do something that prevents them from going there and coming back. I think we have to sit down with our law enforcement people, with our legal people, and look at all of the options. I don't pretend to have all the answers.
Dr. Carson, if you were elected president, would you consider using drones to do missile strikes on these drug cartel lookouts?
I would certainly consider utilizing drones for surveillance, and I think I would want to discuss with Congress having real military authority to secure our borders and to do what is necessary in order to do that. And if that requires getting rid of some of their hideouts, I'll get rid of their hideouts. Absolutely.
So, Doctor, you made a couple of comments earlier about the hideouts that they have, the high-speed pursuit, about using drones with missiles, with bazookas. It's already a war on the border already. Are you suggesting that we escalate to military action on the border?
I'm suggesting that we do what we need to do to secure the border, whatever that is. We need to do it.
You're suggesting drone strikes with missiles and bazookas?
I am suggesting that we do what is necessary to secure the border. That's one of the, excuse me. That's one of the reasons that we have military experts, and we have to utilize them. Having civilians, obviously, who don't know anything is why we're in this situation right now. We need to take advantage of the people who know how to do it.
Dr. Carson, what's your opinion on the construction of the wall at the border, as some other GOP candidates have discussed?
Well, I think we can, in some places, use a wall. Some places we may use a fence. Some places we may use actual personnel. We may use electronic surveillance. We may use drones. We have a lot of very secure installations in America, and we use lots of different ways to keep them secure. All of those things are available to us.
And Dr. Carson, you'd mentioned that political correctness is getting in the way of enforcing the shutting down the border. Could you be more specific and expand a little bit more on that?
Yeah, we're more concerned about the rights of the criminals than we are about the rights of American citizens.
How's that political correctness?
Because if you're like one of these wonderful people, then obviously you make sure that the criminals are taken care of. That's craziness.
2 more questions because we're behind schedule.
Anything you're going to be looking for specifically based off of the briefing you got here from the sheriff when you're on your tour?
I have an open mind, and I'm looking for, first of all, what and what isn't secure, getting some idea of how much of the area, and I'd be very interested in their suggestions for how to secure them.
And you called for the ending of birthright citizenship. Are you concerned that this is going to break apart families?
I think we're smart people, and I think we can come up with appropriate ways to do things. But for a woman to be pregnant and say, I'm going to go over to the United States and have my baby there, so that I have an anchor, that's stupid. Why would we fall for that? That's craziness. You know, there's so many things that we do that just don't make any sense. A little common sense would solve so many of our problems. It seems like we're allergic to it.
But does this break apart families?
We can keep families together. And if they came over here and did that, we can still keep them together by packaging them up and sending them back. They'll still be together.
So you agree with Sarah Palin on that?
I agree with me on that. All right.
All of us together, okay? And all the media is welcome to follow us out. We're going to see some marijuana bags.
Can we go in?
Yes.
Sheriff? Can the cameras?
We have consequences for this.
We've seen actually the U.S. Attorney's Office in the past waive off if it's not how many pounds, Steve?
It used to be
Chief?
a 500-pound minimum. If you had less than 500 pounds, they wouldn't charge you.
They wouldn't even charge. And these people would go back like voluntary return. And so that's where our local prosecutors, that's the key for them, for us to step up. There's a consequence for any crime that they break. So we're no longer in the business of illegal immigration because the Supreme Court ruled. But all of these are criminals breaking state laws, and we hold them accountable, try to give them over the ICE. All ICE is doing is just sending them back ready to try again.
Consequence, you know, yes, there should be consequences for them, but the American people have to impose consequences on the people who are putting people in office who do this stupid stuff. They're the real enemies.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to go back, and Scott Elliott's going to give you a safety briefing as we're walking over at about the 2 o'clock in that direction for the aircraft. It's brand new. That was a heavy one.
Go ahead, I'm right behind you. Where do you want the stairs?
Do you have a question you want to ask? Oh, yeah. Hi. It's hot here.
How do you think it's going, Sheriff? What's the reaction?
I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. Dr. Carson is really the only candidate for president that's been out here to Arizona. We're the main corridor, right, for drug and human smuggling here, besides over in Texas. And so to have an understanding, to talk to the professionals on the ground who are actually doing the work, it's absolutely essential for presidential candidates to understand this issue, and Dr. Carson has shown an interest.
I hope they, because we have to have a broad understanding of this. This can't be dependent
Watch your step here.
on any one person. Whoever is the next president has to understand this. It's critical to the nation.
I would imagine this is quite an impact on you, though, just seeing it, understanding.
I was pretty concerned about it already, but this just fortifies, and it makes it very real for you.
Thank you.
Sheriff, what's your position? It seems like Dr. Carson would be for the usage of drones. I know you've kind of spoken out on it. What do you think about that? What do you make of that?
I totally think that that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous? It's ridiculous because marijuana has a deleterious effect on the developing brain, and the brain develops up until the late 20s. We have enough low IQ people. We don't need to create more.
But if we keep it
aggressive
illegal,
military
that's still giving
posture.
a ton of money to the drug cartels and more violence along the border.
I think there are other ways to fight them. We do not capitulate and compromise our values and principles because it's easier.
Do you think people who smoke
I'm going to talk to him
are
for
low
hours
IQ
today.
I think that there's no question. It doesn't matter what.
As an Army officer on the border
that show that repeated exposure to marijuana in the developing brain has a deleterious effect on the IQ. That's not speculation.
Not for us. Absolutely not. We're going up. We're arresting them.
I think I said very clearly what the studies show.
Well, there's astrophysicists
who actually smoke marijuana and admitted it.
First time in America.
Yeah, I think what they could do if they didn't.
Now they're running from us before they didn't. So we're going to watch your step here.
Dr. Carson, we have somebody that wanted to see you before you got on the helicopter.
Oh.
Mrs. Carson, would you mind holding this jacket?
Oh, okay. Sure, no problem. So you're gonna duke it out now?
Not with him. He's a tough guy. We had, I first met you when you came to our National Sheriff's Conference.
Oh, yeah.
We loved having you there, and you got great support among law
I tell you how much I appreciate it. And when I was looking at that chase, I was thinking, the officer who's in that car, when they catch him, you don't know what's kind of come out of that car, an AK-47. It's just...
You're right.
Sheriff,
Yes.
would you support using drones to secure the border?
I think what we need to do is secure the border. And there's the steps that I outlined there, deployment of the military. This is something that nobody is willing to do. And I think if Dr. Carson entertains that idea, we have a further conversation of deploying 6,000 armed soldiers as we did the last time under President Bush, then build the infrastructure necessary to secure the border. And most important, and I submit for him to consider, and this is why he's here, is to learn all about this, hear from experts, is we have real consequences for enforcing the law. A question he asked, and I'm going to explain even further to him, and I think once there's an understanding that instead of VR, voluntary return, where you're held for 2 to 3 days, that you actually go through adjudication. The judge, she bangs her gavel, you're held for 15 to 30 days through the judicial process, and when you're deported, if you come back, it's 1 month to 2 years in prison. And that any leader, when they hear this information, I think they're going to see, well, this is about consequences for breaking the law, just like every American citizen. They need to apply to people who break our laws from foreign countries.
Drone strikes on American soil seem a little bit even to entertain that.
Sheriff, we need to... You can entertain all kinds of things, but here's the take-home point. The take-home point is that we have excellent military leaders, and we need to employ their expertise because this is a war that we are fighting. That's the bottom line.
And I do agree the fact that we've got to step up and make this real. The military has to be involved. I've advocated this for years. I'm a retired Army officer who served on the border. We were armed. And if we don't take this serious, more important than illegals, more important than the drug cartels that we're fighting, and we have proof that we have the largest drug bust in the history of this state, $3 billion, ISIS, foreign terrorists. This is the likely avenue of approach for the enemies of our country to come in through here. And so it is, and Dr. Carson, we've got to step up our game. We've got to put America first for once instead of everybody else.
Dr. Carson, what do you think about the sheriff's take on drones? Pretty much saying he wouldn't use Dr. Carson.
Well, here's the bottom line. You guys don't seem to be able to understand this. I suggest that we use all the things that we have available to us, but we use mostly the military expertise. I know you guys go back and say, Carson thinks we ought to use drones. That's all you can hear. But what I'm saying is we need to get the military and the military expertise involved because this is a serious problem.
Well, you said missile
Thank you, Dr. Carson.
You're going to get a safety briefing when that helicopter fires up.
Move over.
Yeah. You're going to want to be farther back than you are right now, just so you guys know. Scott, one more picture request with the helicopter and the doctor.
I just want to get hit in my face.
No, I want to hold the jacket. Thank you.
Bring it back safe.
All right.
Ma'am, you can wait right there and we'll get you back inside here just a minute.
Okay.
Get you into the air conditioning. He's getting a safety briefing real quick, so.
I'm just holding on to you because I can't see real great. You doing okay?
Yeah.
You're wonderful. Was network taking us live?
What?
Was network taking us live?
Yeah, we're taking it live right now. They still are. I'm just... Corbin, I'm sorry.
Mrs. Carson, I have to tell you that a couple of months ago, even before the big presidential stuff, we watched the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Loved it. I didn't
Yeah,
even
they
know
did a good job.
I didn't even know who Dr. Carson was.
Oh, yeah.
It was just kind of one of those random things, but it was such a great movie.
They did a nice job. on it.
They really
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
I that was very well done.
Mrs. Carson?
Thank you.
If you'd like, we can put you in an air-conditioned truck so you can watch the video. You're out of the way, you're in AC.
How far do you want us?
How close you want to be to the rotor wash?
I don't. No, I just had LASIK.
I'd recommend then back over towards the parking lot. Truck's right here.
Oh, okay. I'd like to wave, though.
Okay. I just wanted to make the opportunity available to you.
He's yelling at me. Brian, what's up? Brian, I can't be there. I just can't be here because of my eyes.
Can't take the microphone. They went with us live right now, and you took off with the mic. Damn it. You want a shot from Anita, then she walked off.
Okay.
Yeah, she still should have taken off on my microphone. Look, you guys have my back. Okay, well, Anita's not even close by, so I don't think that's going to happen.
Chan, can you hear me?